The M10 Booker is the end result of the Mobile Protected Firepower (MPF) vehicle program that was intended to provide rapidly deployable fire support to light infantry formations. This was considered a critical capability gap in US Army Infantry Brigade combat teams, which required a mobile, protected, direct fire capability to neutralise enemy fortified positions, heavy machine guns, and armoured vehicle threats. Initially to be air-droppable and able to be transported by a C-130 aircraft, in 2015 the Army Requirements Oversight Council determined that these requirements for the MPF program were no longer needed. In 2018, the Army decided to equip the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions and 14 Infantry Brigade combat teams with the new MPF vehicles. In 2022, the General Dynamics Land System M10 was selected, and while being too heavy to be transported by a C-130, it was planned that two could be transported in a C-17. However, in recent developments, the US Air Force has changed its load restrictions so that only one M10 can be carried by a C-17, rather than the two the service had counted on. On 2 May 2025, the US Army Secretary announced that the program was cancelled due to cost, a poorly negotiated maintenance contract, its weight, and its design. Around 80 M10s have already been delivered. So where to now for the Booker? Will the US allocate them to a few active units or perhaps the National Guard, place them in storage, or sell them to an ally? G'day and salutations. Today's briefing, the M10 Booker. What to do with them? This briefing will examine what capability the M10 Booker offers and, if put up for sale, might Australia or New Zealand be interested in acquiring them? At the end of this briefing, I'll link to videos that I think will be of interest. And this briefing is the result of a question from a member. We'll begin with some of the statistics of the M10. It has a weight of 38 to 42 tonnes, depending on armoured configuration, a crew of 4, driver, gunner, commander and loader. It's equipped with a 105mm gun and carries 42 rounds. It doesn't have a common remotely operated weapon station, a CROWS, but it does have a commander's independent panoramic sight. It also has the same fire control system as the M1A2 Abrams, albeit with a 105mm gun. Intended to be in service in 2025, 504 were to be procured. From a possible Australian perspective, it's important to look at the weight of the M10 when compared with armoured vehicles coming into service with the Australian Army, including the Boxer Combat Reconnaissance Vehicle weighing 38.5 tonnes and the Redback Infantry Fighting Vehicle weighing 42 tonnes. So the M10's weight is not an issue for Australia. While the weight of the M10 is likely not an issue, its protection may be. As currently delivered, the M10 has neither explosive reactive armour, ERA, or an active protection system, APS. The M10 does have an interesting protection feature in the form of 2 additional egress hatches, one on the turret and one on the hull, to provide the crew with an extra exit point, something you don't see on many AFVs. A further safety feature are the blowout panels on the turret bustle for the manually loaded 105mm gun. However, as mentioned earlier, the lack of a remote weapon station means the commander must expose himself to fire the pintle-mounted 50 cal machine gun. If the M10s were for sale, would Australia be interested? Well, Australia has 3 regular manoeuvre brigades. One brigade in Darwin is a light amphibious formation with no heavy vehicles. 3 Brigade in Townsville is a heavy armoured formation that will have the M1 Abrams main battle tanks. And 7 Brigade in Brisbane is a motorised formation with no tracked vehicles. So it is very unlikely Australia would look to acquire the M10 for these brigades, as there appears no capability requirement. But what about New Zealand? They will need to replace the New Zealand LAVs, but that is a reconnaissance vehicle, not an assault gun. And given that they don't operate any tracked armoured vehicles, and its infantry battalion group that is to be part of an Australian brigade is to be a motorised formation, there is no capability requirement for the M10 in the New Zealand Army. So it doesn't make sense for Australia or New Zealand to be interested in acquiring the M10 for regular manoeuvre brigades, although I suppose they might be considered for an Australian reserve unit. As a point of reference, the HPLA employs widely mobile 105mm gun platforms, including the ZTQ-15 light tank in high altitude mountainous and swamp terrain, and with the Marines heavy battalions, together with the ZTL-11 and new ZTL assault guns in medium combined arms brigades and in the Marines medium battalions. In summary, in terms of firepower, the M10 has an appropriate gun for its intended role and a very good fire control system. It also allows easy transition for crews moving from the M1 Abrams to the Booker. Its tactical mobility appears good, but it is a little heavy in terms of strategic air mobility when we consider that only one can be carried in a C-17. However, it is in the area of protection that most concerns lie. I would question whether, in its current configuration, it would be survivable against a peer or near-peer adversary. The M10 provides a level of capability, but is it a capability looking for a requirement? Who could make most use of this capability? Well, perhaps the US National Guard, or an ally other than Australia or New Zealand. Wherever they end up, any potential user would likely assess that in its current form, it is not designed to operate in high-intensity conflict, nor to rapidly deploy to a conflict zone. That concludes today's briefing. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like and share, and don't forget to click the notification button so you don't miss the next briefing. You never know what it'll be about. Happy to take suggestions for future briefings from members. Until next time, Vale de Cero.